I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Yeah, everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Hey, welcome to HoopSpeak Live. I'm your host, Beckley Mason. With me today, co-hosting, we got the full complement, Ethan Sherwood-Strauss and Zach Harper, and we will have David Locke from the Jazz radio broadcast and Locked On Sports on Twitter will be joining us later to unravel the mystery that is the Utah Jazz. And fittingly, happy birthday, John Stockton. 51st birthday to the all-time leader in points and assists. We will be talking about short shorts later in his honor. But first, let's get into the matchup last night. Ethan, you were there. Lakers, Warriors, Dwight, David Lee. Some nasty quotes later from Dwight. Where does David Lee get this reputation, and what did you think of that game last night?
Well, he gets the reputation from earning it. This is a delay. There has been a lag time in David Lee being like this, and David Lee getting the reputation for doing this. He is a sneaky goon, and I say sneaky because he's white. Let's face it. Being white, not having tattoos, just like John Stockton, for instance, can help you elude people who might be otherwise inclined to see your dirty play. So yeah, David Lee plays pretty dirty. Dwight was right to be mad at him. Lee sort of combined something of a flop with an elbow to Dwight's face, and I would certainly take offense to that. Perhaps it wasn't smart for Dwight to, pledge vengeance. I don't know how they're not gonna meet later in the playoffs. I don't know how that's gonna happen, but yeah, I get why he's mad.
Yeah, so here's what Dwight said. He said, I will take care of it later. I will remember this game. I will remember that shot. He said he wasn't trying to do it. You can look at the play and see for yourself. I will take care of it later. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to tell the media that you're going to go out and take a shot at a player. They play again April 12th. Zach, what's going on?
Well, I don't understand why Dwight is so mad. Yes, he got hit in the face, but he should have known it was coming when David Lee does one of these before he goes flying in. That was obvious. That's what the wrestlers do. That seems like that's the only consequence that's going to happen once that occurs. Dwight is just being Dwight. Like, Dwight really wants to be tough. It's why he doesn't want to do the pick and roll. He wants to post up and dominate. Dwight, I don't know if he's feeling pressure from being in LA, if he's feeling pressure from all the stuff Shaq's given him over the years, but he's clearly been feeling pressure to be a certain type of player that isn't exactly the best type of player for him to be. So now he's just going to warn, David Lee, like, oh, I'm remembering this. I'm going to come after you. I'm sure everyone's real frightened. Not that Dwight is someone not to be afraid of. I just don't think anybody takes Dwight seriously ever.
Yeah, and two things. Number one, David Lee is going to infuriate an opposing big man over the course of a playoff series.
Yeah.
I mean, that is something to watch for. If it's Zach Randolph versus David Lee, look out for that. That is a powder keg. So that's a preview for you, just so you know. And number two, talking about the actual game, since you did ask about that originally, I should have answered it. If I was a true professional, I might have. But it was a great atmosphere. I love the amount of Laker fans at Oracle because obviously the Lakers are good, so they have a lot of fans combined with there are just a lot of LA and Southern California people, myself included, who live in the Bay Area. So it's this soccer crowd dynamic, frothing anger permeates the building, and to go on a little digressive rant of mine, I felt like there was this massive fear on Warriors fans and confidence among Laker fans that they were going to come back in that game. And I think I said 2 minutes out when there was this fear and they were down 9, like, the Lakers aren't good enough to warrant this kind of fate. Like, what? They're not going to cut the lead, and there was some anger in response to that. But I just find it so interesting that they have that reputation, and maybe it has to do with the recent comebacks they've had. But they have this reputation that just isn't on par with how good they are.
Right, and I think that it's not so much a reputation so much as it is, these are star players who have a certain, I guess reputation is just a different way of thinking about it, but I think that people take these players as sort of an article of faith at this point. And faith overwhelms logic, and if you just
Yes.
look at this team, even if you accept the injuries and you just looked at their point differential, the streaks they've gone on over the year, and took away the uniform, you would say this is a mediocre team. They've got Pau Gasol back. They're on another losing streak. Why, I guess, does this, why do you think, Zach, that fans are so late to catch on to the idea that these Lakers are just, they are what they are, and what they are is only okay. They're a 40-degree day.
Well, 40-degree day is awful. Let me just tell you that 40 degrees. Even since I moved to Minnesota, that's still really cold to me. You give me like a 65. 65's like okay,
Oh man, that's
right?
balmy. I'll take 65 all day, man. That's a 4 seed. 65 is a 4 seed.
Oh, please. Uh, I think that, well, one, the names have to do with it because that is hard to ignore. But with the Lakers, they are actually I know down 9 with 2 minutes left isn't considered a clutch time, but in terms of like clutch offensive and defensive ratings, they're very like feast or famine. Like there is no middle ground. They're either incredible for a month at it or they're horrendous at a month for it. So you have to figure out, are they incredible this month or are they bad this month at coming back in these types of games? So maybe people just thought, hey, this is one of those times where they're going to have a feast, but unfortunately, it was a famine for them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. No,
Ethan, I want you to jump in
sorry.
here because you've written about this. You've written about that the Lakers have basically gotten hot in really opportune, odd kind of these 50-50 clutch moments, and that's given them the appearance of being more dominant when they were in that. I think they won like 13 out of 18 games or something. But
Mhm.
beyond the numbers, just kind of on the grand scale, they remain mediocre.
Yeah, yeah. There's this winning. It's funny to say because it's all about winning, but winning dictates too much of our conversation. It totally changes the dynamics of what we ask athletes and how we talk about them. For instance, when the Lakers nearly get blown out by Toronto and need this ridiculous comeback from Kobe Bryant, where he's shooting these unlikely shots that go in, some of that is Kobe's skill, but it's also a situation where the Lakers are almost losing at home to Toronto, and that shouldn't be forgotten. So just looking at where they were and the schedule that was coming up, they aren't a bad team, but they're also not a good one. And just because they've had a run of winning, it's hard to be confident that that means that everything's fixed when they're just not doing anything better. Their defense was slightly better. Their offense was slightly worse. This just wasn't, as some thought, some people, the Lakers, it's like they think that there's this championship genie in a lamp, and it just needs to be, rubbed the right way, as Christina Aguilera might put it, to make that come out. But I think we're just at the point where that's not the case, and that's fairly self-evident. So I thought it was funny, man. I mean, I don't know if you saw the quotes, but afterwards, Mark Jackson just said it. He was asked about the Lakers and whether he thought the Lakers were better, and his closing quote, and it was something to the effect of,
We're just a better
we're the
team.
better team, and they're in the rear view, and I haven't really checked it. Which I think he said that because he was frustrated by the kinds of questions he was getting asked about beating the mighty Lakers. So, man, the Lakers screw up our commentary. It's really hard to discuss a team that's had so much historic success and so many big names that isn't fundamentally that good.
Meanwhile, the Warriors sort of put their stamp on, okay, they're going to the playoffs. They've put some distance between them and the AC. It's kind of just them and Houston now figuring out who will be 6 and 7. Zach, this is a place I guess we thought the Timberwolves might be this year. from your vantage point, have the Warriors established themselves as something, as a brand from the outside looking in?
This might not be fair, but it's hard for me. It's hard for me to ignore all of that injury history with Curry and Bogut, and not that Bogut's been healthy, but Curry has been unseasonably healthy, and I think that still concerns me. I think they're clearly better as a core, they're clearly better as a system, and talent-wise, they're much better, and they're a legit playoff team. I just worry if Curry goes down for 40 games next year, can they maintain? Can they tread water? That I'm not sure of, but I guess it's kind of the case with everyone that's not LeBron James. It's, oh, if they're healthy, then they're this. Well, if the Warriors are healthy, they're certainly a playoff team.
Right. And Curry, I think, to your point, has established himself as a guy who will drive a team to the playoffs. When he's on the court, they are very tough to beat because of what he does offensively and because he doesn't give away anything defensively. I mean, maybe he's not like a plus super defender, but I have no problem with his intensity, his length. He gets some steals. I think he's really stepped up as a player who, you can not only build around, but build around and expect success. All right.
Yeah.
We are going to bring on David Locke in a little bit, but we're still getting that set up. Until then, Ethan, what did you want to follow with?
Well, I wanted to stall as we got word that we didn't have Locke yet, but I was revealed as a staller. I wanted to follow up on that Curry point, and just go in a mini rant about point guard defense. I feel as though we're not happy with any star point guard's defense, and that just gets thrown out whenever somebody wants to assert that they like a certain point guard over another or don't like a certain point guard. When we think about it, Westbrook, Rondo, Kyrie Irving, Curry, none of these guys are, known or heralded for their defense. Maybe Tony Parker, and it fundamentally, I believe, is just connected to how the point guard position isn't that defensively important. I was having some argument about it earlier today where somebody was saying that Curry, his faults on defense, his flaws are barely talked about, and I was thinking to myself, they should be. It's not what he's paid for. It's not what he's paid for. Worrying about point guard defense, it's almost like worrying about tackling for a shutdown corner in football, where it's good if you have it, but that's not what you're paying the guy for. You're paying him to do something else.
This is where we completely disagree because point guard defense absolutely matters. It matters in stalling an offense or getting set up. It matters in pushing an offense back in where they get set up to run their stuff. It is a very much a body blow in boxing throughout the course of a game. And we're seeing that more and more, yes, the defensive big man is big on pick and rolls, but perimeter defenders are as important throughout the way the league attacks a defense, because you have to be able to cut off driving lanes, you have to be able to rotate. All of this matters. Maybe man-to-man defense for a point guard isn't as important as their help defense, but point guard defense absolutely matters, and it's very, very important to how good a team is.
Yeah, I think that it's certainly not inconsequential. I think okay, so I'm going to straddle your two viewpoints here.
Straddle.
And straddling you guys right now. And what I'm saying is, so if you just get to like a modicum of point guard defense, then that's like the difference between, I guess, the 8th best point guard defender and the 15th best point guard defender, like, doesn't really matter. There's only a few great defensive point guards who seem to me to like really turn a game. Even Chris Paul, as phenomenal of a defender as he is, will take plays off and then he'll tune in for the end of the game, because you know what? Like, if you run the offense and then you also have to chase around screens and fight through them at full speed, you're going to wear yourself down. And you even see it with a guy like LeBron, who, of all the things that he does amazingly, and yes, we've made it 15 minutes without talking about the Heat, but of all the things he does so well, one of the things that is very hard to articulate but so important is he knows when to not care. And he's so good at just like tuning out without getting caught on defense, and occasionally, where he'll wander on offense. It's a really weird, and increasingly, if you want to play 38 minutes a night as a star, probably a very important skill.
Yeah, and system also, to add a little bit more nuance to this, matters. I believe that Curry, not to be a Curry homer, kind of gets hung out to dry a bit by the system because the Warriors never hedge with their big men on pick and rolls. So the guards, Klay Thompson and Curry, throughout the game are just running around screens the whole time, and they expend more energy, and the big men in the Warriors system expend less energy. So that alters perhaps how you view the defense that they're playing. And I would also say with defense, there's this sort of, it's just being competent is what is so important. And there's a difference between not being great at defense, and you were alluding to this point and making this point, and being awful at defense. Like the stuff that Kyrie Irving does, that's actually destructive to a defense. That really matters in a way that you're, and Kobe. That matters in a way that your guy blowing by you, it's different from that. It's you're totally breaking the string. You're breaking the choreography of the defense by going off on your own tangent. And so I think that there's a different. We're not good at parsing the nuance between not being the best physical defender and being somebody who's checked out mentally that's actually sabotaging the team's approach.
Well, I think you make a good point about you don't, as long as you're not awful and destructive on defense, that you can be fine. Because like Zach Randolph is not a good defender, but he's not destructive. He can get in the way, and that's something I think David Thorpe told me this is like
Zach Randolph can do. It's get in the way.
But that's the thing. Like sometimes just getting in the way is enough, and that's how weird judging defense can be. Is that you can completely screw up a defensive rotation, but then just accidentally turn around and be in the way, and you've made a play somehow. Like it's just, there's so much that we still have to learn about defense, and probably the sports VU will help us unlock like what's actually
sports VU about everything. Sports VU. All right. Well, some good terrible French accents, and that brings us as a real clean segue to our guest. He's locked on sports, David Locke.
Apologize, that was something nuts. I was supposed to join in with you guys, and at the exact moment, Beckley, I heard you kind of ramping up. The internet in my entire house went out, so I am on the little data card right now, and I hope I hold up all right. It's terrible timing, and where I found my old 19, it's a year old mic and earphone, I have no idea, but somewhere I just found it. So I apologize for the sun behind me. I'll try to see what I can do to kind of roll around. My bad. Sorry about that.
No problem. I actually had a similar thing happen. The power in my entire apartment went out when I was doing something like this live on ESPN. So no worries. This is no big deal. We're glad to have you. Let's start with the Jazz. The trade deadline came and went. They've still got the guard rotation, more or less, that they came into the season with. That's been very hard to watch. What's your take on where this organization is, with specific looking at the backcourt?
All right, well, let me back up to the trade deadline. I think the decision that was made at the trade deadline is that the flexibility that the organization has built through various moves in going into this offseason was not something that they were willing to give up. Time will tell whether that was the right decision or not. Coincidentally, the team has kind of fallen off the rails since that trade line. And on the guard line, I don't know, Beckley, specifically. I mean, Mo Williams was coming back shortly thereafter. A lot of people talked about whether they should have gotten involved in Calderon. What are they going to do? Just add another free agent, and particularly another $8 million free agent? I never really understood what else they could do. Mo Williams has an injury history, and they were hoping that it wouldn't come to fruition this year, and it did. This time with a thumb, which is kind of a freak injury, and he missed 32 games. And stunningly, Jamal Tinsley kind of held down the fort okay during that, partially due to the schedule, partially because just kind of heard you guys talking a little bit. Sometimes just, we haven't figured out defense. Sometimes I'm not sure we've actually figured out guys who put the ball in the right place at the right time, and maybe the VU will figure that out as well. But there's something to just a guy that puts the ball in the shooting pocket and where it's supposed to go. For much of the year, the Jazz were shooting 3 percentage points better with Tinsley on the floor than with anyone else on the floor, and that doesn't make any sense. But it was happening. So that's how they survived that. Then in regards to, just kind of all of the wings, none of them have stepped forward to be terrific. Gordon's getting pretty close. Marvin's had kind of a Marvin Williams-esque year, frankly. That hits another hot button I could babble on forever about why we are continually think that players will switch teams and change in this league. They won't. And so they just, I think they're distinctly average across the board there. And I'm not sure what else they should have done on that guard line, specifically to your question, Beckley.
Yeah, well, let's look towards the future here. We've got a question from one of our viewers, Justin Sweeney. We'll bring him on. And Justin, go ahead and ask Mr. Locke your question. Oh, we're having some audio issues here. All right. Sorry about that, Justin. I know what he was going to ask, which was, all right, they were kind of in a tough space in this season with their point guards, with, Mo getting hurt. But in the future, do you think that, they're looking young? Do they want to bring back someone who can give them a little more veteran presence, the way Tinsley has in organizing the offense? What are you looking for in the future at the backcourt?
Well, I think they've got to find one. They've got a few guys around the league zeroed in that they're interested in. They aren't sharing those names, but they definitely have. But they know they need to go find a point guard, that they've got to find some answer to do that. And they still play a system where the point guard's important. The point guard's a funny position right now, guys, in the fact that so much of this kind of scoring point guard, and, John Wall drops 47 last night, and Russell's always doing what he's doing. But I don't think we have to look any further than Denver to be reminded the value of a point guard. The last 3 nights, Denver played Philadelphia, who we saw last night, and I do think they took the night off, but they were awful, and they are awful. And that's 9th in the Eastern Conference, by the way. Wow, that's in something else. But they lost to Denver by 1, right? Without Ty Lawson. The next night, Ty Lawson played Sacramento. They're awful, too. And they're playing a little better. Philadelphia beat them by 20, and they barely snuck that one out without Ty Lawson. And then last night they go to New Orleans, and they get blasted. They're down 20 at halftime. So, I don't think we can undervalue the value of having that point guard position who's conducting and at least running what you want. In fact, the fact that Jazz are where they are with their point guard play this year is maybe a testament just to holding this thing barely together. I kind of feel like we've Tarzan this year is the way I refer to it. We just kind of have been going from vine to vine and hoping the next vine shows up. And here recently it just didn't come. We kind of just fell for a while, and hopefully we'll re-grab onto a lower level vine at some point before we go splat. But that's kind of how this whole season has been for us.
I was hoping that analogy would go towards beating your chest, but it went to an even cooler direction, David. I've noticed that Gordon Hayward is getting playing time finally, and I'm happy about that. And I think he's fantastic. And what I want to know is, what took so long? Why did it take so long for him to get heavy minutes? What was the freaking hold up there?
I think I missed the key name. It's one of 4, so give me the key. I missed the name of who you're speaking of.
Gordon Hayward.
He got really heavy minutes at the end of last year. I think he finished March and April last year playing about 38 minutes a night. This year, when the year started, the combination of him with Mo, Paul, and Al, he just got lost. The desire of the organization is to put the ball in his hands and have him do a lot with it. And so when he was getting lost and not being able to make those plays, they then moved him off the bench kind of in a Manu Ginobili role where, we've all seen it a million times. The minute Manu comes and he gets the ball up in that kind of, near half court and goes with that, 40-foot high pick and roll and starts going to work off Tiago Splitter or whoever it might be. And we're doing a little differently. It's not, but it is that the minute Gordon came into games, he was getting the ball in that second unit. Now he's back in the starting lineup and playing with a much higher level of aggressiveness, with the coaching staff feeling more comfortable getting him the ball. So I actually think that move really, really worked quite well for the development of who Gordon Hayward is. And if I do a morning podcast, and I was looking at some things this morning on it, and he is I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I think he's using 22% of his possessions to shoot a three, 12% of his possessions at the free throw line. The only other guys in the NBA that are doing that are James Harden, Danilo Gallinari, and then the most bizarre one of all is Gerald Wallace is doing that. Do you realize how awful he has to be inefficient and use his possessions correctly? I mean, that's just a side note, but like that's incredible.
Wallace also shoots, I can tell you exactly why. He shoots 46% on layups. As someone who is in Brooklyn and seen him a lot this year, it's weird. He does those hard straight lines to the basket, and if he doesn't get fouled, he just throws it up, and for being 6'10", it's a real struggle for him. Zach, you want to jump in?
But Beckley, don't.
Yeah.
Before Zach jumps in, Beckley, don't worry. Damian Lillard's not that good. That's really. They're gonna make NBA rules against that trade.
That's what I like to call the Billy King special. That's why I don't ever want Billy King to be fired because he's always fun. I want to ask you about another young guy, Alec Burks. It seems like the fans are pining for him to get as much time as possible. Maybe that just says more about not wanting to see Randy Foye and Jamal Tinsley and Earl Watson on the court. But what is your assessment of what Burks has brought to the Jazz, and how much improvement do you think he'll have in the near future?
If he was as good as our fan base thinks he is, we'd be like the 5th seed. Now, with that said, how cool would that be, actually? Could you imagine if, like, every player in the league elevated to the level that their fan base thought their player was? Think about how good everybody'd be. Or think about how bad, like, the poor victim of every team's wrath it would be. Anyway, I don't know yet, Zach, to be honest with you. He's made a nice stride. I think there's one thing people have forgotten, that these second-year players are going through an 82-game schedule for the first time ever. And so I think both of our second-year players have made a nice step here in the second half of the season. That's frankly a step that they never got last year because of the fact that they had like no prep. Last year was just such a joke. I mean, if you lived it traveling, it was even more insane than actually just trying to keep up with it every day. So I think that I'm impressed with how he's developed. I'm not sure what position he is. And I'm still not, if I was being totally honest, I'm still not entirely clear on what his success route is. In other words, he seems to play much better when the ball is in his hands than when he's off the ball right now. But these things change, right? So just as we stand here on the 26th of March, and with that, then he probably needs to play some point guard. But he's not going to be a 30-minute-a-night point guard. So he's going to have to figure out how to play some of those things as a shooting guard as well. He's making strides, but it's not clear what he is. And frankly, what's interesting is he wasn't playing very well early in the year at all when the clamoring for his time was going on. He has played far better here in the second half. And most importantly, the two things he's done very well is his length. He's really put an effort in defensively, which he didn't have to do at Colorado, and has become a decent defensive player. And then the other one that is just one of the truly undervalued items in this league is guard rebounding. And his rebounding is terrific. It's particularly terrific in contrast to Mo and Randy, but it's right. Pretty terrific.
Yeah, I wanted to ask specifically about that. It seems like some of his flaws sort of work perfectly for the Jazz. If he can just avoid turning it over, get shots up, and help on the offensive glass. I think when I last looked at kind of a comprehensive look at their lineup data, it was basically the Jazz lineups that work get offensive rebounds. And Favors, Cantor obviously are a beast there, Millsap, Burks, and Carroll. And it's kind of this, and also Hayward, it's a weird mix of players. I guess my question is, does the type of player Burks needs to be just be like, get it?
I lost Beckley there at the end of that question.
Uh-oh.
I think everybody lost Beckley there for a minute, didn't we?
I wish I could complete his thought.
I know. All right, we can play the game.
A little bit.
So what do we think he was going to say?
Hey, guys, are you getting me back yet?
There we go.
We can hear
He was going to ask you about Seattle, David.
Offensive rebounding and the Jazz, like basically, is there something tactical, or is it just when they have their best offensive rebounders on the court, they play better?
You've got one on me here. I haven't seen that correlation. So you've beat me here on this one. So I don't know. There's nothing tactical. I just think we're big.
I guess it's surprising.
I don't have to. I don't say
it's
that.
Surprising to me that DeMar Carroll is like a very limited offensive player in some respects, whereas Randy Foye shoots a lot of threes and makes them. You would think that Foye being on the court would help their offense just drastically, just having a guy who shoots threes. But it turns out Carroll tends to have a better, impact in a lot of lineups on the offense. And I'm just curious why you think that is.
Well, DeMar is a really interesting player. Like if we figure we got really big diehards here that are listening, DeMar's been one of the more.
It's only weirdos. Go for it.
DeMar's been one of the more interesting players for me to watch this year. I actually think I've learned a lot about the NBA with DeMar. So he's been really, really good when he comes off the bench. His activity, and it's a different way than you think. His activity level is fabulous. He's the offensive rebound he's getting more often than not, Beckley, is that the guy comes down with the ball and he sneaks around the baseline side and knocks it away. However, when he has started and does that against top-level players, he's gotten abused. Caron Butler put, I think, 18 on him in the first quarter of a game because suddenly, instead of rotating off of last night was Jeremy he didn't play, but if he had played, it would have been like rotating off Jeremy Pargo. He's rotating off a top-line first-team guy who kills him every time he leads him. We lost a game this year when DeMar was starting because he left J.J. Redick in Milwaukee on a rotation. And it's interesting how DeMar's energy, which just is an incredible boost to this team and has done really good things. And specifically, I have looked at some of the numbers you were talking about, Beckley. Those offensive rebounding numbers are outliers, though. That's because you've got small sample size. I think they're up at like 44% and kind of crazy numbers like that. But he's a really, really good player as long as he stays right in his what I call, his rightful order of the basketball universe. And the minute he leaves the rightful order of his basketball universe, it's interesting how the same exact things that were so successful suddenly are a detriment.
That is very intriguing. Totally shifting in a sloppy segue as I'm wont to do. You're a draft guru. I've loved your work on the draft, and I also believe that we tend to underrate drafts. We underestimate. This is another year where people say it's a weak draft, and I want to know from you, the guru, whether or not you agree that this is a terrible draft year.
Well, I become a draft guy starting hopefully on about May 1st. If not, it'll probably be after my day of sleep. It'll be April 19th or 20th. So I've watched very few players. I will say I finally saw a point guard I like the other day, and I've watched him very little, but I love a kid out of Ohio State. I actually can't think of his name. It's how little I've watched college basketball. I'm really well. I don't know what a point guard is. I actually talked to Kevin O'Connor about this morning. Like, what is a point guard anymore? You watch these college games, and what we've decided a point guard is some guy who just drives the lane and throws the ball to somebody. Like, is it Kraft? Is that the kid at Ohio State? The other day, I watched Kraft do two things, and it was like, when did this become bizarre? One of them was against a zone. He actually, I know this is really crazy. He dribbled the ball three dribbles into a zone with the intention of moving a player to open up a driving lane for a teammate. He didn't go with the intention to score himself. I know this is a really, really radical concept. The other thing is, I watched him when the ball left him, and he watched the other players on the floor and where they were rather than the ball. And so when he got the ball, and again, radical concept, when he got the ball, he knew what to do with it quickly. And I mean, I watched Trey Burke a little bit the other day. I was underwhelmed. I watched the Syracuse kid, what's that, Michael Williams or whatever his name is. He's really long, but I was underwhelmed. I watched Marcus Smart the other day. I was certainly underwhelmed, and he's like now talked about being the number one pick. And maybe even to answer your question better than anything else specifically on some of that, because my knowledge is really limited right now with having not watched these guys a great deal. But what I'm hearing on the draft is that everyone's going to refer to it as a bad draft, and it is a bad top. There's no Anthony Davis. There's no Tim Duncan. But even more so, there's probably no O.J. Mayo number 3 pick, no, whatever. I don't know who the if you look back, number 3s, certainly no Kevin Love. What was Love in that draft? 5. And that maybe at about 11 and 12, the draft lines up to what it's supposed to be, is what I'm hearing from people. That by the time you're picking 11 or 12 or 13, you're getting what you should get at 11, 12, or 13. But up to that point, you're probably going to struggle. Now, I would disagree with that comment just because, frankly, after number 5, nobody really gets much of anything anyway. I mean, we had our fan base had this huge issue last year whether we should make the playoff because we were losing a draft pick. And I think what that draft pick, by making the playoffs, turned out to be Terrence Ross. Is that right? Who's now, I think, in the D League in Houston? Is that right? I don't even know where he is. He's played about...
Terrence Williams. No,
Where
not
is he?
Terrence Williams. Terrence Jones, the third Terrence.
Terrence Jones.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrence Ross is somewhere else. Is actually decent for Toronto, right? Yeah. Like, I think this guy's played like 8 minutes. I don't know. That's an exaggeration. But I think that, there's still a process to what you're getting out of these players. My note on that would be, I think 49% of all players taken after the 11th pick of an NBA draft don't make an NBA rotation in the first round, not to mention 80%.
It is, so maybe it'll be interesting then with the top of the draft being weaker, we might see some shenanigans, some trades that we wouldn't normally see as people try to shuffle around to maybe get kind of the Patriots draft of 3 picks in the second half of the draft or in the late first round instead of having the 8th, which is like, what's that going to be? David, unfortunately, we gotta roll on. Thanks for sticking with us and powering through on the card.
Well, my apologies for the weird whatever happened here to start. So I apologize for that, and keep up the great work, all you guys. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to catch all the work all of you do in the various realms in which I do, but I do it regularly. So thank you.
All right, man. Well, hopefully we'll have you on again closer to the draft after you've had your day of rest and dug into the tape.
You bet, guys.
All right, take it easy. All right, that is David Locke. Follow him, Locked On Sports. Let's hop right to Dagger Smash Noted. Anyone got one, or would you like me to start?
I'll let you start. I have one, but come on, that's tradition.
All right, well, I'm glad we're all prepared. My dagger has really very little to do with the traditional dagger. My dagger is about hormones, and we're all growing. I'm starting to get my first beard, and it's a really important time in your life when you're changing. No, these are about stress hormones, the hormones that flood your body when you get adrenaline, when you are under pressure, when the bright lights are on you, the kind of hormones that you need to call in to preserve a 27-game win streak. And I talked to a trainer who had something really interesting to say about stress, and I'm trying to follow up with the researcher at Stanford who has made a lot of really interesting discoveries with this. Basically, what happens when you're stressed a lot is that your body stops responding to the hormones, and the things that used to get you up for a game or get you up for a moment stop doing that. And so when we look at the Heat and we say, God, why do they keep having these flat first halves? Like, yes, Norris Cole is a problem there. But also, I think it is that they just cannot physically get up for games on a hormonal level the way that they used to until they have those moments where either they're down big and it kicks in, or LeBron James had that dunk when it got tied at 68 all, and that sort of sparked them and they put the game away quickly. I think it's a really interesting case here, and hopefully I'll have some more hard information on it in the future.
Yeah, and that's great. We have all these advancements related to the biology of players that we don't know exactly how it affects what they do. Minutes are one of those. I definitely want to know what's the proper minute allotment. I never know. They have minutes limits, and it's just confusing to me. It seems more art than science. My dagger smash noted, my smash actually is more related to somebody who's finally getting some minutes, and has been playing really well, but in doing so has disappointed me. And that would be John Wall. John Wall had a huge game, as Locke mentioned, the 47 points. And I was hoping this would play out differently. I was hoping that he would continue to sort of disappoint the Wizards organization, and that an enterprising team, a team that's better at developing talent, would swoop in and trade for him. Now, with him having this flurry of awesome play, it's rather obvious that they're going to retain him. And I don't think that's good for his development. The Wizards are one of those teams where they don't make young players better. So I'm worried for John Wall. Much as I like to watch him play, much as I believe in his talent, I wish he was playing badly enough to wind up on a better team.
My note is also about John Wall, which is now split into three things. One, I still think it's funny that Ethan pretends to like John Wall. Two, I think that Washington was going to keep John Wall even if he was awful, because this is the same organization that gave a lot of money to Andre Blatch. And three, I found something very interesting in John Wall's game last night, and it came at halftime. He had scored 26 points in the first half, and during the halftime interview, right before he heads to the locker room, he was asked about, with them having 5 guys out for the night, did he feel the need to be more of a scorer, not a facilitator? And he starts rambling, and in this rambling, he says, I want to be a franchise player. I want to be a max player in the middle of a game interview. I found that fascinating. Like, you just don't see that. He talked about his contract once.
Macro interview.
In the middle of a game. That was one of the best moments of the season. It was great.
John Wall, a testament to what you can do when you're not fat.
One more thing. He also said at the end of the game, he said, I've been playing out of my mind lately. This is the most self-aware player in the league.
Fantastic. Yeah, not the way that he's been described often, but certainly true recently. Okay, let's wrap it up. Ethan, you want to talk while Roger Bain takes us out?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'll talk about it. I didn't find, as I'm saying down there, I didn't find the game to be that impressive, the John Wall game. I mean, it was numerically, but he just got a lot of calls, hit a lot of bad shots. It didn't look like the blossoming of John Wall that it was billed to be. At the same time, in the macro level, the level that he's highly aware of in these interviews, he is playing a lot better. So it's almost like the game falsely epitomized the great play that he's had, even though he's been playing quite well. So, we'll follow this John Wall situation. I mean, I don't know how he ranks among the top point guards. It's really hard to say because of the injuries and all that. He's sort of at a Curry phase at this point, the point Curry was at last time, where the injuries and the lack of team success have sort of clouded,